Wright State University Disc Golf Course is a relatively new course in the Dayton, Ohio area. Established in 2021, this course features turf tee pads and Disc Catcher Pro targets. Secondary tee pads were implemented in 2023, but for the purposes of this video, all layouts will be from the short tees. This layout is a par 58, 6,115 feet over a mix of hilly and flat terrain. There is also a good mix of wide open, long fairways, as well as some very technical wooded shots. The course is not overly cart or stroller friendly due to the nature of some of the hills, especially in the wooded section. Those same hills coupled with great soil do make it one of the quickest draining courses in the area and a great option after rainfall. The back half of the course, located along Kaufman Road, is a little more susceptible to wind, so be sure to have overstable discs for windy days so that you do not risk throwing into traffic.
All right, so starting off on hole number 1 here, this is a 352-foot par 3, and it can be pretty tricky. As you can see here, you have pretty thick woods immediately off to your right-hand side, the entire length of the fairway. The left side out here is pretty wide open, so generally for me, because I have not a good forehand, but one that's good enough, I like to go forehand around this. And it's better to err off throwing it off a little bit to the left. You just want to be careful because next to these power towers out here are the long tee pads for 16, and that is 15's basket down there. Now I did draw up some maps of my own, which I'll put on the screen during this. But basically, you need to fade in from a right-handed right-hand forehand perspective, down around these bushes, and it's kind of a U-turn to get over here to the basket. And it just sits right there. Now you want to be careful because this is a sloped green, so it's very easy to run away, but that's it. Moving on to hole number 2, this is a 337-foot par 3 downhill. You can see the power line towers out there, and to the right of it is the basket. This is what I would consider the signature hole for this course. It plays great for a forehand, just swing it out there towards those power lines, or you can go backhand. When they keep these trees trimmed right here that you have to throw over, the backhand line opens up much more, especially if you just want to go kind of a straight to fade kind of shot. But I would consider this the signature hole in the course. Now I'm going to try my best not to be huffy and puffy into the microphone too, because I'm walking fast. But pretty simple stuff here. It's one of my favorite holes in the entire city. Pretty wide open green. You do want to be careful not to go too far right. Those trees get pretty thick pretty quick. Okay, once you do complete hole 2, if you look back up towards where the tee pad is, you'll want to do a U-turn. You'll see this yellow gas line stick here. There's an entrance into the woods over here next to the service road on the left. The rest of the course is pretty straightforward in regards to where you go. It's just a straight path that you follow. This is the one tricky spot. Just come into this entrance and it'll take you directly to tee pad number 3. All right, so hole number 3 is a 325-foot par 3, and this begins the wooded section of the course. This one's pretty difficult with it being a par 3. You got a decision, you got to come right here through the middle. And then at this point, you kind of have a choice to make. I tend to have more success going forehand and flexing it through the left-hand side over here. But backhand straight up the right-hand side is also an option. You do want to be careful because right here at this bend, there's a creek along the right-hand side that kind of comes close to the fairway. Now there's generally never any water in here, so losing a disc due to that is not really a concern. It's more so your footing. This one is a very tough hole to birdie, so if you happen to get a 2, congratulations. Once you tap out here, you'll just make a left and go up the trail. All right, hole 4 is a 263-foot par 4. As you can see off the tee, it's very tricky. The basket is way up on the right, but there's not many choices as far as the line goes. I like to throw a real soft forehand up this left side gap and try to get it to follow this path. Now myself, I don't ever go backhand because I'm too afraid if it fades out, you go into these trees on the left and it goes downhill. But Ross, who you know if you follow my channel, always throws backhand here, and he can generally get it to land up here in this area around same spot that I do when I have a good drive. This hole is a hit or miss. Sometimes you can birdie it, sometimes you'll bogey it, but it just kind of comes down to whether or not you get lucky poking through that first set of trees. Once you finish the hole, you'll just continue the path on down to hole number 5. Hole number 5 is another par 4, 313 feet. Your drive is going to be more about placement. I would recommend either a putter or a mid-range. So off the tee, it kind of goes straight. The path will dip down a little bit, but you'll carry over the entire length of this. So no worry about the elevation. Once you get up here where it kind of starts to lift in elevation again, it's kind of level with where you were on your tee. So if you can get anything to land up here around these 2 trees where we're at right now, it sets up really great for a second shot forehand. The fairway will bend slightly left, and then the fairway will bend slightly back to the right and straighten out right to the basket. This is kind of similar to hole number 4, to where it's possible to birdie if you have a decent drive, but it can bogey if you bite and have a bad drive. Continue along the path to hole number 6. All right, hole 6 is a 270-foot downhill par 3. Kind of similar to hole 4. Your tee shot's going to require you to hit this really tight gap down the middle. I like to go with like a overstable putter or approach disc. If you hit this gap, you got a pretty good chance of getting down here for a birdie. But kicking any one of those early trees in, it's going to be a real struggle just to keep your par. So once you get down about 75% of the fairway down here towards the bottom of the hill, it's a sharp left directly to the basket. And once you complete this hole, you'll just continue on the path. All right, now we're out of the pure woods and have a little bit easier of a drive. Hole number 7 is a par 3, 377 feet. While the drive isn't overly difficult, this is one of the only 2 holes on this course I have never birdied. Your drive requires you to throw something that's going to fade pretty hard halfway up the fairway. So it's just a straight shot. You got big trouble left and right, but the fairway is probably about 35-40 feet wide. So generally I like to go with that Firebird type disc. For me, it's a TSA Omen, where I just kind of throw it up in the air and let the disc do all the work of fading up here. Now you want to be careful not to push too far straight, because the basket is going to be up here on a sloped green right side of the fairway. So I like to land over here on the left off my drive to set up for a simple forehand chip shot, nice and low up into the green. Once you complete this hole, tee pad number 8 is straight ahead. Hole number 8 is a 299-foot par 3. Sets up almost opposite of hole number 7, so I like to throw forehand here with a nice overstable distance driver. Same thing, it's not technically a wooded hole, but you have woods on the left and right. This fairway is a little bit wider, probably about 40 to 45 feet. But I like to throw something that'll either go straight or just barely flex until I get past this set of trees right up here on the upper right-hand side. If you catch those fading out, you can be in trouble and kind of get stuck behind these bushes down here on the right. As to where the basket is, over here by this purple leaf tree. This tree is a good indicator of about a 40-foot putt. This purple tree on the left. Do be careful because hole number 10 tee shots for right-handed people can fly over here and land by this basket very easily. So keep your head on a swivel, and once you complete this hole, tee pad 9 is straight ahead. Hole 9 is another par 3, 330 feet this time. Sets up good if you have a really straight backhand. You can also go flex forehand around the right of this big tree. Lately, I've been going with a huge hyzer flip just underneath the left tree that we are just now passing. I only do that if there's no one playing over on 10 or no traffic, because if you push too far out to the left, that's University Boulevard, and you don't want to hit that. Once you do complete this hole, we get up here, so we have some people, so I'll make this as quick as possible. You'll want to make a left where they're heading, and that'll be tee pad number 10. All the trees along the right-hand side over here can get into some pretty thick woods, so if you do go backhand, right-hand over there, make sure not to flip it over, or it can be an easy bogey. There's additional parking over here across the street next to the traffic circle if you want to start on 10. I'm sorry, hole 10 is a par 4, 530 foot. Really gives you an opportunity to throw a big drive. We're gonna go quick here so we're not in the way as much as possible. But this big tree up here in the middle of the hill that you see is a great indicator for where you wanna try to get to. You wanna try to stay right of that. Again, right-handed backhand perspective. This is what I was talking about on hole 8. If you end up going left of that, you risk hitting hole 8's basket, and it's kind of blind. But with this being a par 4, it gives you a good opportunity to spread your wings. Bomber shot, be careful on the right-hand side. If you flip something over, that traffic circle can come into play. And then the approach shot, you just got to compete with a few woods. So if you land over here on this left-hand side, which the right-hand backhand should set you up for, it really opens up your options to either go forehand or backhand around this last big tree next to the basket. This is definitely a must birdie with it being a par 4. So make sure to collect your birdie here, and then once you complete the hole, hook a left to hole 11's tee pad. All right, hole number 11, another par 3, 366 feet. You got a couple trees immediately off the tee pad to the left. So if you go backhand, you're going to want to make sure to stay underneath these branches. Flex forehand is another option, but I don't really like that. I like throwing like my MVP Tesla, like a 9-speed neutral driver, and trying to split these two power lines to where it'll fade out on backhand right before that big tree. And if you're able to do that, should land you right by the basket. Now you do have the option of going more of a traditional hyzer and swinging out to the right where those trees aren't in play. But then you might be playing poke and pray on the power lines, and why they look like they have a lot of gaps in them, it's very easy to hit them. This hole is birdieable if you have the power. Again, it's 366, but it's slightly downhill, but a very fun hole. Once you complete this, you'll make a left over to hole 12's tee pad. All right, hole 12 is another par 3, 268 feet. Really fun hole. There used to be a tree on the right where you see that big stump out of the ground, but it recently has fallen. So, with that being the case, a nice backhand hyzer shot with like a fairway driver or a mid-range, if you have the power to get up this hill, it probably plays closer to about 280. Make sure, especially on windy days, you don't pull it too far right, because if you go into that power substation over there, it is a barbed wire fence and a lost disc. Also, the basket sits on this really unique slope. Makes it really fun. So even with that tree falling, the hole isn't just completely a straight shot. You got to worry about ground play, but I would also consider this more of a must birdie type hole. Once you complete that, just head on straight back to that area around the fence to tee number 13. All right, hole 13 is a 477 par 3. It's along with hole 7, the only other hole I've never birdied due to the distance in the par 3. And it's late in the evening, so we're heading right into the sun. The morning, you never really have these problems. The sun sits down well, but in the evening, playing these last few holes up this direction can be a little bit blinding. Now, Kaufman Road is on the right. I would say it can come into play, but if you have the power to get there, you're probably not shanking it that direction. But these woods on the left are a big problem, so you don't want to saw it off. My play here with these power lines out here where the sun is at, I like to take a fairly overstable distance driver and kind of aim at those, more so the right one, and try to land out here in this field. Right here, halfway up the fairway, is the cutout to where you were at on hole 7. So if you can get up to this yellow stick, it sets you up in a good spot to throw like a mid-range or putt and approach disc, depending on your power level. But this hole can be very tricky just at par, with it being a par 3. I have found that the more left you are off your drive, the trickier your approach shot is. So that's why I try to stick out into the kind of right half center of the fairway. Once you complete the hole, you just head straight ahead to tee pad number 14. All right, hole 14 is a par 4 this time, 486 foot hole. It's almost identical to hole 13, but more of a must birdie due to it being a par 4 this time. I would just say to be very careful because Kaufman Road slants inward on this green and is much easier to reach. If you throw something flippy, it can definitely get out there and turn over on you. With that highway coming in so close over there, there's a lot of wind that sometimes you can't feel on the tee pad, that once you get up here on this part of this hill, it comes up over this hill and just, it can pull your disc over right really hard. This hill is about 2/3 of the way to the basket, so if you can land on or over it, it sets you up great for an easy approach shot. Doing my best to try to keep the sun out of this. I didn't think about that. But basket 14 is over here to the right of the 2 power line towers. And just be cautious because to the left of them is basket number 2 that we were on earlier. But again, this being a par 4 is pretty easy to birdie as long as you don't try to be a hero off the tee pad. Once you complete it, you can head straight back up the hill where you were out on hole number 2 and just watch out for people throwing down the hill. All right, hole 15 is a 268 foot par 3, pretty significantly uphill. This one took me a while to learn. The basket is up on the hill right between those power line towers. Forehand's a very viable option if you have decent power. Just make sure to swing it out pretty far left. The hill slopes down to the right up here. And if you saw off a forehand or turn over a backhand, that same wind from hole 14 comes over this hill over here and it can rip your disc over to the right. And these trees on the right hand side are very punishing. I've been throwing a backhand with my MVP Tesla every time now, and I've found this hole to become very easy doing that, just throwing straight at it, letting the turn happen. and then fading out. Once you complete this hole, hole 16, tee pad is right on the other side of the power line tower. All right, hole 16 is a par 3, 329 feet, slightly downhill, and it is the runner-up for signature hole in the course, in my opinion. You do throw down into this little valley, and there's a hill on the left that you can see, and then there's a build-up hill on the right where the dirt is. Now, that wind I was talking about in the last 2 holes is the worst right here, so be very careful if you're throwing backhand not to throw anything understable. It'll go over those trees on the right and either land in there, which is very bad, or it'll continue to flip down onto Kaufman Road that is very nearby, which is even worse. The safe play is to throw something fairly overstable to completely overstable. You can throw low into this hill on the right and kind of just use the hill as a backstop. I've been going with my Thought Space Athletics Coalesce, which is like a 9403 disc, and just going right at this, and the wind kind of turns it and usually gets it right here close to circle 1 for me. But once you complete this, you'll just go straight ahead into the sun to hole number 17. All right, hole 17 is another par 3 listed at 199 feet. It is slightly uphill. It's one of the few holes on the course where the new tee pad is actually the short tee pad. The longer one is back to our right in the corner. I have had the most success going up here with like a control driver on forehand. It is a little bit poke and pray going up that left-hand side. There's one gap basically you can hit and fade right in towards the basket area. I've been tinkering with the backhand slightly overstable mid-range on a flex line. Again, Ross, who you know from the channel, does that every time here, and he usually lands up here pretty close to the basket. So kind of a dealer's choice. Very fun hole. Just be careful, this fence lines the entire right hand side of the course, so if you flip something over, you could be climbing a fence. There's no access to get on that side. Once you complete this hole, you'll make a left directly where the camera's facing over to tee pad number 18. All right, and to wrap things up, hole number 18 is another par 3. It's listed at 325 feet. I would say it plays a little bit longer than that. You got all these trees over on the left that you need to be concerned about. There is a flex forehand line out to the left if you have pretty decent forehand power. I don't have enough power to do that. I like throwing at these Christmas trees over here on the right. Just be careful because there is a picnic shelter over there. But my favorite play is to kind of go right at these trees with something fairly overstable like a synapse and try to get as close as you can to this light post, and then just letting it fade out towards the basket. It's definitely a bonus birdie hole, which we're going to not get too close to because it's in play right now. But that's it. That's definitely a bonus birdie hole. If you get it, congratulations. And that's all 18 holes. So while we're closing out the video here, just a few reasons why I like this course, Wright State University. Usually pretty low traffic. As I showed you in the layout, there's a lot of different ways to play the course. You got technical holes, you got long holes, you got elevation change out the wazoo. And it's close by to me. So if you're up for a challenge, it's a great course to come out to. If you're a beginner or don't like struggling, might want to avoid the course. But other than that, it's a lot of fun.